By emphasising psychological continuity as sufficient for personal continuity, we run the risk of introducing the following problem. Since we do not need the same body over time to remain the same person, what is to stop one person from being continuous with distinct bodies, or even from being continuous with multiple bodies at the same time? If we think of the psychological profile of a person, everything they believe, desire, fear, hope, remember, their dispositions to certain kinds of actions and so on, if we think of all that as a body of information, then we can imagine scenarios where at some point in a person's life, that information is duplicated or copied and transferred onto another body or bodies, much as one would copy and install a computer program on multiple hard drives. Let us suppose that once the installation is complete, each of these individuals carries on as a psychological agent, having beliefs, desires, etc., and acting out their plans for the future. From that point of duplication, it looks as if there are many individuals psychologically continuous with our original individual. The person has, as we say, fissioned. What's the problem? The problem is that fission is not compatible with what seems to be an obvious logical feature of numerical identity, namely that it's transitive. That is, if A is identical with B and A is identical with C, then B must be identical with C. But in the case of fission, if psychological continuity is sufficient for numerical identity, then one person A is continuous with both B and C, and so should be identical with both. But since B and C are not identical, by the transitivity of identity, it should follow that A can't be identical with either. What to say? Some philosophers have argued that A is not identical with either B or C. On their view, fission is death. This is an odd position to hold, however, because had C, for instance, not come into existence, we would have been inclined to say that A survives as B. But how can the existence of another person, C, determine whether or not one survives? On four-dimensionalist accounts, what fission shows is that multiple individuals can share a temporal part, the part up to the point of fission. What this means is that you, right now, could be multiple people, insofar as your temporal parts to date could be a common part of all those individuals. Four-dimensionalists are happy to embrace the idea of multiple occupancy, many individuals in one. But notice it complicates the survival question. Since I am many, I survive as many, and while each successor of me is as entitled to the next to claim to be the successor of me, since after fission they are distinct from each other, they can't all be the successor of me. Fission on the four-dimensionalist view is beginning also to look a lot like death.